A very good evening, very good afternoon, a very warm welcome wherever you might be in the world to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick and Pay on a grey, wet, quite not unpleasant, it's just not much fun afternoon here in Johannesburg, which is not looking good for my round of golf tomorrow morning. So possibly a good reason to just settle in with a good bottle of wine later on and listen to the rain drip down around us. And that's probably going to be quite easy to do because I've got not one but four good bottles of wine, four very good bottles of wine awaiting me. One from an old mate of mine, in fact, both from old mates of mine, but talking wine from, in one case, the Robertson area, and then the other, wine from all over the place. A very cool new label that makes its debut on Dan Really Likes Wine. It is the very first vintage. So what are we drinking? Who are we tasting it with? I'll tell you in just a moment. Before we do that, though, a couple of things to look out for. Tomorrow, Wine Future gets underway. Wine Future 2021 kicks off 5 o'clock South African time, but at 4:30, we'll be warming up the show, myself, Pancho Campo, along with David Fuhrer before it gets going. And on tomorrow's list, amongst others, you will find Mike Ratcliffe speaking, Karina Hoos speaking, and Siobhan Thompson speaking. Very strong South African flavour to day one of Wine Future. If you'd like to go along, it's 4 days of some of the greatest voices in the wine industry. Normally €125 for the 4 days, but if you use the DNICL60 code, that drops it down to just €65 for the course of the 4 days. Some wonderful speakers, some inspired topics, some of them a little beyond the world of wine, but with a lot of application to the business that those of us who are in wine will find useful. And it really is going to be a terrific 4 days. So do look out for that. Also look out for some more stuff coming up this evening. One of my favorite people in the creative industry, Donovan Goliath of the endless string of Goliaths in South African comedy. Well, he's my guest this evening on Instagram Live on the Dan Nichols Show. That kicks off at 6 o'clock. Myself and Donovan. So straight out of the wine cellar and into the Dan Nichols Show studio with Donovan at 6 o'clock. And then at 9 o'clock tonight, it's Two Full Tossers, my cricket show with Alan Committee. And tonight, the greatest night watchman of them all, Paul Harris, is our guest on Two Full Tossers tonight. That's also online as we talk cricket, but not too seriously. Two Full Tossers. Paul Harris, our guest later on tonight. Our guests today, though, are two people in the wine industry who've got rather differing paths through said industry. One has been in it for some time, and the other's been drinking wine for a long time, but has suddenly decided that actually he's going to make wine as well. So a little later on in the show, I'm joined by a good friend of mine, Harry Hartman, who I first met playing golf years ago. And I thought he used to clean people's teeth. He was some sort of dental hygienist, but now he's decided he's making wine as well. I'm going to have my first taste of it. Before we do that, though, somebody I've spent a fair bit of time with at wine events in South Africa because he's involved in all manner of them. He also looks after, consults to, assists with a selection of top South African brands. One of those is Arendsig, and he joins me today to get the show underway. Colyn Truter, very, very warm welcome for the first time to Dan Really Likes Wine. What on earth have I done wrong to not have you on the show before this?
Dan, thanks for the opportunity, and always good to catch up. Obviously, with the fact that we can't do any events now, we've missed out on quite a few glasses of wine together. So we'll make up for it today, and hopefully very soon. I think everyone was just very overloaded in that initial couple of months where so many online stuff happened, and we all had to go into survival mode. So I think everyone just literally tried to look after themselves during these tough times. But hopefully, with harvest starting a couple of weeks ago, people have got something else to focus on and hopefully not worry too much about what's happening around the world. So I was actually in the vineyard this morning at 5:30 with Lawrence harvesting Chardonnay. So looking forward to share the wines with you.
And we have them lined up, and we're going to be tasting some of that Arendsig and telling the Arendsig story in just a few minutes' time. But let's focus on the Colyn story first of all, because I'm never entirely sure what it is that you do. You're just kind of a fixture in the wine industry. And if you're doing something about wine, and Colyn will generally pop up in a corner somewhere with lots of great information and helpful contributions. What is your wine story? How did you fall into it? And where do we find you today?
Yeah, so I finished high school in Robertson. So Lawrence and I was actually in school together. So we've Standard 8 till matric. I was there surrounded by a lot of producer families, obviously people are either having their own vineyards. My passion has always been brands. That's what I studied at varsity at Stellenbosch. I would say my first passion has always been sport, cricket and rugby. So I had 2 stints of playing rugby overseas in Canada and New Zealand, 2003 and 4. And when I got back, it was like, where does the career start? So I applied for a couple of positions or looked out for something, and coincidentally, one was as a bulk wine broker in Stellenbosch. So I worked for a company who, facilitated bulk deals between buyers and sellers. And I was quite lucky at a young age to be approached by a family in Robertson from Rietvallei, and Kobus Burger approached me and asked if I could, help them with their marketing, because they broke away from the Bergkelder or distillers in those days, and basically had to start from scratch. So that's how my marketing life started in the wine business. I'm definitely not a connoisseur. I think the biggest thing is the more you taste, the more you learn. So that's the fun part of it. But my passion has always been on the brand side of the business as well. And the main thing is, elevating the consumer's perception of wine. And, we all in South Africa have to work together to do that internationally as well, to drive up our price points. And I started my own business almost 10 years ago. And that was then to start looking after smaller producers and help them with their marketing and sales. I was then, like you mentioned, whenever an opportunity pops up, I'm able to do it because I work for myself. And it started to filter out a little bit. So Lawrence was the first guy I met with to start my business in 2011. So Arendsig has been the oldest and longest one of my producers that I work with. And then I also started with a French barrel agency. So I've got a Bordeaux cooperage that I work with. And then, like I said, the world sports side of Pick and Pay that you and I worked on. So a little bit of everything, but I try to balance itself out quite nicely.
It offers you a selection of hats to wear, and you wear them almost dashingly. What is it about wine that strikes a particular chord with you? Well, what says, Colyn, this is the space you want to be in?
But for me personally, it's just the subjective side of wine. We'll all taste together, and some of us might like a specific style of wine and others won't. You can't force feed this. It's really about, growing your palate. And similarly with that is, what makes one wine special compared to the other one. And that's where Arendsig comes in. And my passion with Cape Side specific wines is, wine has to not only tell a story, but it really has to resonate with where it comes from. And it has to represent that origin, which is where my passion definitely lies in really portraying the different sites around the Cape Winelands. A Robertson Chardonnay should taste different to a Yeoman Arder Chardonnay or a Stellenbosch one. And it doesn't always make one better than the other, but it really just showcases location. So that's definitely a big thing for me. And the fact that you are never, you never know everything. And you'll always learn the more wine you drink and the more appellations from around the world you try. So, and I must say, I think you'll agree, the other fun part of the beauty of the wine industry for me is just the wonderful people in the industry, wonderful characters, wonderful people to work with and enjoy life with. So that's a really big thing for me as well. It's just the personalities in the business.
Of which you are certainly one, and the passion is very clear to see. You mentioned the Cape site specific. It's got a slight wine anorak feel to it, but I know it is quite a cool, interesting space. Tell us a little bit about your involvement there and what exactly it means for people who don't really know.
So it's always been a big passion of mine, and so working with my fellow colleagues in the industry, we all go in our own route and kind of fight our own battles. And it's not always been very common for the wine industry for people to work together. And leading up to Cape Wine 2018, I sat with a couple of my friends and said, look, maybe it's time then to start this platform. I like to call it a collaboration. It's not another association or organization. But the whole point is telling the story about the Cape Winelands and showing the diversity of the multiple regions we work with. But in essence, we use the Wine of Origin scheme in South Africa. And the story behind Cape Side specific is that the wine either has to be a single vineyard, an estate-grown wine, or the biggest one would be ward specific. So you can make a blend, but it has to be representative of the the smaller appellation. So, for argument's sake, you can't have wine of origin Stellenbosch, but then the grapes are from Bottleray and Simonsburg. It has to be only Bottleray or Simonsburg to represent that area. And yeah, we're currently 14 members, ranging from guys who started their own label a couple of years ago up to 6-7 generation families. So it's a wonderful balance also in terms of size, smaller producers, medium-sized producers, and some big, I would say, legendary producers from the industry as well.
The wines that represent Cape Side Pacific is something we're going to be talking about a little down the road with Colyn. I'm looking forward to that conversation. The one we're having today, though, speaks to Arendsig and your good friend. Give us a little bit of the Arendsig story, if you will.
Yeah, so Lawrence is the 5th generation on the property. They've always had vineyards and fruit in Robertson. We're in the southern part of the valley, more closer towards Bonnievale. And in 2004, his dad gave him the opportunity to plant some vineyards and start his brand. So we're quite young, but it's actually been going for 18 years now. So his focus has always been site-specific wines from his family property. And we are a 100% single vineyard focused producer. So all the wines we make, and if you let me just show you the label, it's certified single vineyard, so it has to go through the Wine and Spirits Board. All of it is made 100% from those sites. So it's kind of your test cricket in wine for me, your purest form of it, because there's no manipulation that you can do. So Lawrence has been, in my mind, quite a maverick in those days with the likes of Eben Sadi and starting their own thing in the early 2000s. So quite a relaxed guy, sometimes too relaxed in terms of what he does. And he'll always say he's a very hands-off winemaker. He likes to spend his time in the vineyard. All the wines we make are spontaneously fermented, neutral oak, so very old barrels, just not to influence the wine that much, but kind of an old world focused on the production side. So, but the main thread is to showcase the block vintage after vintage and kind of build that fingerprint of the vine.
The work that he does gives us the wines that we are going to try, and wines that have got a little bit of a celebrity following. How did you get Kevin Peterson so absolutely obsessed with Arendsig?
Yeah, I must say it was when he launched opened his lodge in the Kruger. I actually contacted him via Twitter and said I would love to send him some samples to try it, and he had some friends over for the opening from the UK. Fell in love with the Arendsig wines, and he's been a wonderful ambassador for us. And I think he'll forgive me if I say that we don't pay him or give him wine. He actually just does it by himself. So we're very humbled by what he's done, especially on the platform that he promotes it. So I know you did an interview last year with him where we sent some wine to this UK house in London to taste with you, and yeah, we're very blessed. And it's purely just a kind of a networking thing that evolved, and he was on the farm end of 2018, I think, in December, or was it 19, with his family, and I was lucky enough to spend some time with him there. So, but it really just comes down to a guy being, I think, fell in love with the story and liked the story of the wines as well. And it's been very, very good for us.
And I think your wine education has been phenomenal in that now 6, sometimes even 7 out of 10 occasions, KP on blind tasting can tell between a red and a white. So you're making some significant process there, Colyn. We've got a red and a white. Let's kick off with the first of those. And this is some Chardonnay. And a Robertson Chardonnay. It's just such a natural fit, really. The soils in Robertson cry out for Chardonnay, and the pairing is so beautiful. For people who maybe aren't sure why that's the case, in layman's terms, words that even I can understand, explain to us why that Chardonnay fit is just so good with Robertson.
Yeah, it's a good question, because we often get kind of blocked in from a country or a regional point to focus on one varietal, almost similar to New Zealand being very strong Sauvignon Blanc. But then there's also amazing pockets within a valley that showcases top quality, even if it's not necessarily a varietal that a lot of people know about. But I mean, the likes of the Wetzel from Dani de Wet and the kind of older guard, really put a big focus on Chardonnay and Robertson. And the limestone soils we have definitely lends itself to it as well. Because we are a river valley, we've got a wonderful diversity in soil types. So from the riverbed being alluvial into clay, into quite rocky shale and limestone. So Chardonnay just has a beautiful kind of positioning there in Robertson, and it does really well. So we don't have to do too much with it. So we're very lucky. And this specific one, the Arendsig Chardonnay single vineyard, is I think you'll taste it there as well. But what we really aim for is showing the freshness of Chardonnay rather than the manipulation in the cellar. So all spontaneously fermented, old foudres, so the big 5,000 liter casks, and very old barrels. So the barrels we work with are 5 to 10 years old. So there's no real oak influence on the wine, but we keep it on the lease in the barrel for about 10 months before bottling. So we want to showcase the fresher, fruit-driven style of Chardonnay, and kind of convince the ABC Club that Chardonnay is, can be something wonderful to enjoy by itself and doesn't have to be big, oaky, buttery styles of Chardonnay.
Caroline Jury in Ripon in Yorkshire, if you are watching, you can drink this Chardonnay. I promise. It is not eating a branch, which Chardonnay was so often guilty of. All right, well, let's give it a crack. This fruit-driven Chardonnay. Yeah, it's when you give Chardonnay that opportunity to show what the fruit is and not try and mask it with all that wood, which I think by and large most of our producers are doing a significantly better job of. But here it is, so fresh. This is what, a 2019. So it's already a couple of years old, but it's still beautifully fresh and alive and zesty. And it's exactly the kind of wine that blows that ABC argument right out the water.
Yeah, and for in terms of the soil, because of that limestone, and on our farm we have a lot of Karoo shale and limestone bedrock, so it's quite an arid soil, but it gives beautiful minerality to the vine, to the grapes and the wine, and a kind of a freshness. So the kind of focus is like, why would we want to mask that with malolactic? Well, not to sound too geeky, but malolactic fermentation and new oak. So it has to be a wine that you can sit on a warm day or a sunny afternoon and drink a bottle by itself. It doesn't have to be, enjoyed with food to kind of counteract the oak and the richness of the wine. Chardonnay is still, in the global terms, the top-selling wine. Where in South Africa, Sauvignon Blanc is by far. But there's definitely people coming back to enjoy Chardonnay again, and specifically this type of style that is a bit more consumer-friendly, I would say.
If you're watching last week, we had some cracking Chardonnay with Richard Kershaw, Bubbles Highland. Yes. We also had some of the Caratara that Rutger's making at Stark Conde.
Yeah.
Wines, and they all have subtle differences, but important ones. Speaking of those subtle but important differences, you spoke about site-specific, about a wine from one area in South Africa having a certain set of hallmarks, certain set of features. And I know it's not just important to you, but a lot of winemakers and a lot of people in the wine industry are promoting and starting to see more distinctively how or why a Cabernet Sauvignon from Stellenbosch is different to a Cabernet Sauvignon that's coming out of Swartland. What for you, if I'm drinking a glass of this versus a glass of Stellenbosch Chardonnay, what should I be looking for? What is marking out Robertson as something unique?
One thing that definitely shines through is minerality in the wine, so the beautiful freshness on the palate. And I pick a lot more of that green apple, so more the greener side of citrus, and not necessarily the orange side, so more riper style. So I find that limey, green flavors of Chardonnay and Robertson, which is beautiful in terms of the fresher spectrum. And then remember places like Stellenbosch and Aarde, and those with their soil types that they have, the different climate, it brings out a totally different spectrum. And clay soils, I sent you a bottle of Chenin, which I hope you can enjoy sometime soon. But being that clay soils, it just adds a lot of density to the wine already. So the soil for us makes a huge difference in the end product. That's out of the 4 pillars of terroir, probably the most important one for us at Arendsig is soil, and what difference that makes to the end product. So I think Robertson Chardonnay is just purely fresh, fruit-driven style with great complexity as well. Which we don't, like I said, we don't always have to have new oak contributed to the wine, and that limey flavors I find really refreshing on the Chardonnays.
There's a beautiful standalone, almost summery Chardonnay, which is well worth a crack. And I think that single vineyard story will certainly appeal to a lot of the wine purists. Speaking of wine purists, Skalk Stapelberg, the king of Pinotage, is watching. Fantastic wines, well done, says Skalk. And that is actually a photo of Skalk. That genuinely is him in his photo there. All right, so Chardonnay and Robertson we know well. Cabernet Sauvignon and Robertson, maybe not quite so familiar to everybody. And yet you've got a wine here which I have had before and I've thoroughly enjoyed. We know from what you've just said why Chardonnay works so well. What is Robertson doing that allows Cabernet Sauvignon to flourish?
Yeah, it's the reason I wanted to show this with you as well is purely because of that. You know, the people don't always see Robertson as a Cabernet producing area, but a big misconception with the region is the fact that because it's a drier and a lower rainfall area, people think it's quite hot and too hot to produce certain varietals. But what they don't know is that what I don't think a lot of people in the general public understand is the fact that we have, although we have very warm days, we have wonderful cool evenings coming from the Cape Agulhas coast. So you'll have a 40-degree day and a 15-degree night, which is a huge fluctuation in temperature. And in terms of ripening for vineyards, it's beautiful. It's beneficial to the plant to rest in the evening before the next warm day. It almost sounds geeky, but that's exactly it. And I think not just for Robertson, but also for South Africa, you know, on the southern tip of Africa, we are blessed with a lot of sunlight. And the worst thing you can do is just, you know, letting the grapes ripen too much. So then we sit with big fruit, and almost like cooked fruit flavors that I personally don't like. So one thing we've done the last 4 vintages at Arendsig is actually picking the cab a little bit earlier. And as Brewer Hartman used to say with his Cab Francs as well, you know, this greenness is not herbaceous, and we don't want the green flavors. That's the pyrazine part of the grape, but we do want that really beautiful green herbal spices on the wine, and that's something that Robertson gives beautifully. I mean, coming back to the different regions, we can't in Robertson try to make a Stellenbosch style of cab because we don't have the climate or the soils. So we have to find our own identity. And the last 3 vintages, I really believe Lawrence hit the nail on the head with also a 13.5 alcohol. You know, you almost go back to the 90s of the old big Bordeaux style blends from Stellenbosch that, again, 12.5% alcohol. And then the Robert Parker kind of philosophy came in and it was all alcohol and oak. And cab is quite tannic naturally. So, you know, we actually want to turn down the wine a little bit. So, again, I think the area in Robertson, especially certain parts of it, are really conducive to producing top quality cab, but just making sure that, you know, you work properly in the vineyard.
All right, let's have a crack at it and see how it compares to the last time I had some.
And on that point, this is also 2019, which is still quite young for cab, and cab almost need that time in the bottle to soften out and let the tannin integrate. But the style that we produce with extended maceration time on the skins to extract that natural tannin, even though it's quite a young vintage, the wine is still very approachable at such a young stage, but it can go for 10, 15 years easily. And because we don't have a new oak component to the wine, we almost skip that whole bottle maturation phase for the oak and the wine to integrate. So it is very young from a vintage point, but it's still quite juicy and quite a nice natural tannin on the wine.
I'll be following the story of this unfolding because I think the journey ahead is great already. It's eminently drinkable. It's got some lovely restraint to it, and very, very different style. It's not as big and noisy and shouty as some cabs. Not that I dislike those. I do like a big Stellenbosch cab very much indeed. Yeah. Just a slightly quieter, slightly more reserved version thereof.
Exactly, and like I said, I mean, it's not about trying to make the one better than the other. just from a personal point of view, some people really like that. And there's still, coming back to the Chardonnay, there's still a lot of people who want big oaky Chardonnays, because that's what their palate, wants. But the restrained side, like you quite rightly said, is what I really enjoy about this cab, and the beautiful freshness on the wine. That stands out for me.
Yeah. All right. Just before we let you go, Colyn, I know we've got some time with Overgo coming up that you're arranging for us. Who else sits in the Truter stable?
So currently it's only Arendsig, and I help a little bit, or help David van Velden at Overgo a little bit with his marketing and sales now. I think we started a couple of months ago. We've always been great friends, and he's also part of the Cape Side specific group. So from a permanent point, that's kind of the two wine brands that I work with. But within the Cape Side specific stable, I'm always available as a sounding board, or assisting guys with any ideas around wine styles or packaging or price points or all of that. So the big aim there is really to see how we can help each other to grow each other's businesses, and that's where I get involved. But from a permanent point, between the barrels and Arendsig, it keeps me pretty busy.
All right, and very happily so. Man with a great passion for wine and the knowledge to match. Some lovely stuff there from Arendsig. Loden's doing a terrific job yet again. Colyn, thank you, much appreciated, and we look forward to having you back on the show again soon.
Yeah, thanks, Dan, and thanks for your work. Just breaking the shackles of wine can be enjoyable. It doesn't have to be a expensive, wealthy kind of perception towards the consumer, and I think it's wonderful to break the shackles down a bit and make it approachable and affordable for everyone. So thanks for your work for the industry, and I hope to catch up with you sometime soon. Let us know when you're in the Cape.
I will certainly do that. Colyn Truter taking us through some of the new releases from Arendsig up in Robertson. A Chardonnay, as to be expected, a Cabernet Sauvignon you might not have. Cabernet Sauvignon are a little different to the ones we find in Stellenbosch, a little lighter and quieter, but a delightful wine. Okay, so 2 down, 2 to come. Now, if Colyn's been in the wine industry for some time, our second guest has not, at least not formally. He's certainly been drinking wine for many years. But he got hold of me probably about 2 years ago and told me that he had a plan to make some wine, and that he was very excited to let me know what it to censor my way so I could evaluate it. That wine arrived last week, so I've hauled him onto the show, and I think he's our very first. I always think of him as Swiss because I remember somebody at the Arabella Golf Club calling him Swiss. I think he got a bit annoyed because he's actually Dutch, and a great guy, wonderful golfer, and now a winemaker of sorts from the Harry Hartman Wine Company. Marcel, good evening. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Dan. Thanks for having us. It's a pleasure to finally be there.
Yeah. It's taken a little while, and it probably, if we go back over the last, let's say, 35,000 years, you would have struggled to pick a more challenging time to decide to launch a new wine label.
Yeah, we picked a challenging moment to launch our wine, definitely. It was in the books for years. With a few friends, we had the idea to launch a wine. We love wine. We've been sending wine to friends in Europe, asked for advice, and sent many pallets. And were asked several times, why don't you do something yourself? And finally, end of 2019, we took it up and did. And by the time our first bottles were labeled, lockdown kicked in. So our wine has been maturing quite nicely. We've got a bit more stock than we anticipated, but we're very happy with the wine. So but we could have picked a better moment to start a label, but it's the way it is.
Well, it is now in the market, and we're going to be trying some in just a moment. Haven't tasted it yet, so I'm genuinely excited. Talk a little bit about the story. I think it's something that many people will casually talk about, usually after their 7th bottle of Shiraz over dinner, say, oh, we should definitely make some wine together, and that's kind of where it ends. You've actually made this real, and as I understand it was you and a couple of mates, and you decided to make the dream of many of us actually come true.
Yeah, we had the idea, but then you have to meet, you have to have the opportunity to do it. And one of the partners in the business is a graphic designer. So he sees, he's made some beautiful wine labels, including our own, of course. And he sees people, and he came across a winemaker who had some wine available for us. The idea was to start with 1,000 liters, but then we got excited and ended up with about 4,000. We have to call our winemakers consultants. We're not disclosing who they are, because the idea basically of Harry Hartman is that it could be vintages that are a bit older, maybe varietals that they're not that common, although we started with ones that are very well known. But it's a brand you can trust. We like good wine, and if you buy a bottle of Harry Hartman, you can be assured that you get a very good wine. And it was sharing our passion for wine, basically. And the people we work with at the moment, I think you know who made these wines. I won't let you guess, but it's a bit of a rock star at the moment. I think his wine sold out in 2 days. We haven't been so lucky yet, but I'm sure we'll get there one day. So we're very happy with the winemakers that we work with, but we don't disclose them, so it's a bit of a secret society that we're working within.
All very cloak and dagger. You'll notice I've only said Marcel. I haven't revealed his surname. It's that top secret. This works. The model that you have, as I understand, is kind of a negotiant model. You find some grapes, you buy them, you put them together. And is that going to change year to year, what you decide to make, where you get it, how you put it together?
The two labels that we have at the moment, some say Shiraz or Syrah. That will definitely be our wine for at least the next 10 years. That we commit long time. It's not a once-off thing. So every year we'll be bottling the Samsay. The Coracle is our Bordeaux blend, and that's the same thing with that. That's about 2,000 liters each, and it won't be mass production. If we produce other wines, we will add a label, but we won't really increase the number of bottles or the volume of the wine itself. We are adding wines, though. We have the two labels, so the two varietals this year, or 2019, they're both 2019. For 2020, we've added 2 Chennins, because we wanted to have a white wine, and we're big Chenin lovers. And the idea of the terroir really spoke to us. So we have a Chenin from Stellenbosch and a Chenin from Swartland. So the idea is, if you buy a case of those wines, that you get 3 Swartland and 3 Stellenbosch to taste the difference in style. And basically what you're tasting is the terroir, the soil, the climate. Our wine should be an experience, a tasting experience. And that's also the story behind the name of the Shiraz, the Samsay. Shiraz or Syrah, or some say Shiraz, some say Syrah. It has to be fun to drink wine. It has to be fun to talk about it. And I'm sure some people will taste the difference between the 2 bottles we have, the Shiraz and the Syrah. But a little secret is that it is the same wine in all the bottles. But some will say Shiraz and some say Syrah. And you can make up your own mind what you think it is.
It's a conversation I have to have with my wife, who refuses to drink Syrah but will drink Shiraz.
Okay.
He's a lawyer, so I don't win these arguments. When you have the opportunity to do this, you want to do something that speaks to your own particular taste, your own particular passion. So would the red blend, I love the way that you call it a Stellenbosch blend rather than Bordeaux, the Stellenbosch blend and the Shiraz/Syrah, would those slightly bigger styles of red wines be the ones that have always been the favorites on your palate, Marcel?
They have, yes. Yeah. I really, as you said, I'm not Swiss, I'm Dutch. And the nice thing in Holland is that you can get wines from all over Europe or from all over the world. There's a very wide varietal. So I've tasted many different wines, and I like the Bordeaux style. The reason that we call it a classic Stellenbosch blend, I think, was because we're not allowed to call it a Bordeaux blend. But it's all Bordeaux varietals, so it is a Bordeaux blend, but that's not the name you can give your wine, because it's not from the Bordeaux. We will add more, but Syrah and Bordeaux blends are definitely one of my favorites, yeah.
All right. Well, that'll be the second of our wines, the Coracle. Let's get into the first of them, and you'll already have heard the name being mentioned, the Some Say, and it's not just the name, which is cool and quirky, and which really appeals to me, but I love the packaging. It's very clean. It's very fresh. There's nothing overly complicated about it, and it's also bright white. Which reflects the world in which we generally know you, Marcel, as the man behind Zoom Tooth Whitening. And that's probably the other reason why you've given us 2 red wines, because the more of these we drink, the more stained our teeth might become, the more Zoom whitening treatments you can then provide as a result.
You worked it all out. Yeah. Exactly.
All right, so let's give this one a crack. And these are grapes from Elgin, correct?
No, the grapes are Stellenbosch. It's about 60% Stellenbosch and 40% Cederberg. It's a side 900-meter high vineyard in Cederberg, and the rest is Stellenbosch grapes. So it's a bit of I think style Cederberg with the cooler climate. You could probably call it a little bit old world, and Stellenbosch more new world, temperature-wise and style-wise. But I think the combination is, I'll leave it up to you to think what you.
The combination is excellent. I think that's how you finish that particular sentence. Lovely and rich. Not Chris Morris rich, but lovely and rich nonetheless. And got a beautiful big mouthful. Yeah, I think it's very much a game of semantics, Shiraz versus Syrah. But my general feel is when people are saying Shiraz, they're talking about something that's a bit bigger and bolder, and Syrah often refers to something that's a little softer and more elegant. This has definitely got a bit more of a set of shoulders on it, I feel.
It is, yeah. But I like the sommeliers or the experts who have tasted it say it's quite an elegant wine. It's not the big like a peppery wine. It's fruity, it's floral, some tobacco, vanilla. But they'd like to call it more the Syrah side than the Shiraz side. But so we're just.
I might have to agree to disagree with some of them, although it certainly is an elegant wine, though, and it's one that is it was great fun to drink. Was there a particular South African Shiraz Syrah that inspired you when you were thinking of the kind of wine you'd like to produce here?
Look, as you mentioned earlier, I lived at Arabella. So I know the wines from that area very well, and that's quite diverse. I drink quite a bit of the Luddite, which is quite a big wine. Niels Verburg is a great friend, so I like that style. But no, we haven't really been inspired by a certain wine, we can say. But what we do with our winemaker is before the final blend is made, we taste. And I think all of us who are involved in Harry Hartman like the slightly more elegant styles, and that's how we came to decide for this blend. Yeah, I can't say about which wines I've been inspired of. I drink so many, as you mentioned earlier. So
your research is admirable, Marcel. Your research is admirable. All right, so that is the first one.
It's still a young wine, also. It still has a bit of tannin, so I can understand your comment about still being quite a mouthful, but it's still a bit tight, but it will open up more and become smoother in time.
That was certainly no criticism. I very much enjoyed that mouthful, and I suspect
but they're still young wines. Yeah,
I shall be following it up with many more mouthfuls once the show is get into Monday night's dinner. All right, so that is the Some Say Syrah, Some Say Shiraz. And when you have a look at your bottle, if you manage to get hold of them, if you can infiltrate the secret Harry Hartman Society, you'll see the labels alternate between Shiraz and Syrah, which is a lovely little quirk. That's the first of them. Let's go on to the second of them, and this is the Coracle, which sounds like something that I could had to consult in Harry Potter. But I suspect that that's not actually it.
Might be, yeah.
It's some sort of fishing boat, isn't it?
Apparently, the story is that it's a one-man fishing boat for a fisherman to support his family. So we thought it was quite cute. But the wine business at the moment is not really supporting the family yet, but
Oh, we've just lost Marcel there for a moment. He's frozen up. We'll try and get him back in just a second as we try the second of his two. We got you back there, Marcel?
Okay, you lost me there. Yeah. No, it's also an homage to those who really had to go out with little boats in the earlier days to be able to build the wine business in the Cape with little fishing boats to support themselves and their families. I remember the story that Anthony Hamilton Russell told me about. Hamilton Russell in the early days, there was only wine. You were allowed to make wine in Stellenbosch, and Hermanade and Amanus and other areas were just for fruit or whatever they did. So it was quite a struggle for many to get where we are at the moment. So the name and the idea is also to honor those who made it possible for us to be amateurs really in the wine business and learning every day and not pretending to be experts, and have the luck to, we drank a lot of wine, we know we can recognize good wines, but I'm always very impressed and by people who really can describe it and are more knowledgeable. And we are learning, but we know good wine, and we happen to be lucky enough to have those working with us to make beautiful wines.
So this is the Coracle. That's a one-man fishing boat, which does not refer to the early morning ventures that Marcel used to take in search of Perlemoen when he lived at Arabella. Instead, it's a lot more metaphorical. A couple of comments coming in. Gerard Holden, a good friend of the show from Holden Mans down in Franschhoek. Good evening, Dan. What's with this weather in Joburg and missing Franschhoek? Well, we're glad to have you up here. I'll be catching up with Gerard a little later on this week and tasting some of the 817 wines he currently has on offer from Holden Mans. And Cindy Everly responding to a comment about the Chenin Blanc earlier. Those Chenins are spectacular. So you've got a fan there in the form of Cindy. You'll also, I suspect, have fans of the Cabernet Sauvignon, if the words I've read about it are anything to go by. Stellenbosch blend, which would infer Stellenbosch grapes. Where did you find your Cabernet Sauvignon for this, Marcel?
The Cabernet Sauvignon is, the Cabernet is Polka Dry, Merlot Simonsberg, and Cap Franc is Pottelerij. And the Petit Verdot is also Simonsberg and Polka Dry. So it's different sites in Stellenbosch where the grapes come from.
And I was having a look at the makeup. It's almost a third Petit Verdot, which is a good hefty chunk of it. A particular reason for that?
It's to make it more elegant, really. It's a wine that we have the winemakers as our consultants, and it's a different blend, but it makes it quite accessible already at an earlier age. And it's actually also a wine, and that's what some of the restaurants who serve it like, that even with the warmer weather, normally a Bordeaux blend is seen as can be seen as quite a big wine, more for winter. This is very enjoyable to drink it cooled on a warm summer's day, which some of the restaurants that we work with do. We do have another Bordeaux blend which just been bottled but not labeled yet, and that is a bigger wine, also 2019, but 64% of Cabernet Sauvignon. This is only 31, so that wine will need a little bit more time, but that's also why we've had it in barrel for 2 years. And that is quite an interesting wine. It's a collaboration with a sommelier, and he has sort of leaked some information already about it, but you'll be reading more about it very soon.
Yeah, I have no doubt.
I saw Cindy, because Cindy tasted our two Chenins, And she's been kind enough also to borrow us some of our beautiful Salto glasses. They drink them very nicely. It makes the wine even more enjoyable to drink. And they look nice.
If Cindy liked your Shannon, she's even more of a fan of the coracle. That coracle is an absolute showstopper. Really beautiful stuff. And there is a wonderful lightness. It just shimmies onto the palate. Much like a Dutch golf captain at Arabella after his captain's dinner at 1 o'clock in the morning, if memory serves, a decade or two back.
Yeah, we've had some good times at Arabella. Now the coracle, we had it bottled just before lockdown, or labeled just before. That we didn't touch it for quite a while. And end of last year, we decided to open a bottle, and we were pleasantly surprised with how elegant and how it opened up already in a relatively short period of time. It's I'd rather leave it up to people who taste it and drink it to decide what they think of it. But we are extremely happy with our wines. But yeah, it couldn't be any different with the rockstar winemaker that we're dealing with, which is
name shall never be known upon pain of death. I do like to say I'm reminded of the words of my good friend Carrie Adams, who's been in the wine industry for about 400 years, talking about how as much as we have wine that can age so well, both red and white, we also, probably as well as anybody on the planet, make wine that can be drunk really early on. I think although this can definitely age, it is already so approachable and so smooth and so light, and just a really nice glass of wine to throw back, which leaves me the challenge of which one of these two to finish off with dinner tonight, Marcel.
Well, you've got both, so don't worry about it. We submitted our wines also to Platte, and I was a bit scared with the coracle that it would be too young, but of course the people at Platte know what they're tasting, so they I think they judged it correctly, even though it was young. So we got quite good ratings in there, which is nice to get for a maiden vintage. I got an email which was really got us quite excited for a 5-star nomination for the Samsay. So then it was retasted, but we got close, but no cigar. We got 93 points for the Samsay, which you need 95 for 5 stars. But our winemaker says next year, it's a 5-star material. So we'll be there again.
Well, you've got to leave yourself a few heights still to aim for, Marcel.
Sorry?
You've got to leave yourself a few heights still to aim for.
Absolutely, yeah. But it's not about the stars; it's whether people like it. And so far, people really enjoying our wines, and that's what we want. We want to share our passion. So quite probably 50% of the wine also goes overseas. We have some of the wine already in Holland and Germany, because my girlfriend is from Germany, and some very good connections there with hotels and restaurants. And so the wine is available there, and some family in Holland is in the wine business, so they are available overseas. So it will be probably in the end about a 50-50 split. And a third partner in the business just moved to UK, and he will get his allocation very soon. It will ship with the new wines, the 2020 Chenin. So they'll be going in the container in the next few weeks.
It's an exciting time for what is a very young brand that seems to have navigated the storms of 2020 reasonably well. What's going forward, if I were to have you on the show, Marcel, in 5 years' time, where would you like to see the Harry Hartman brand by then? What would you be up to?
Yeah, no, we don't want to keep on growing and growing the number of varietals. We want a limited number of very good wines, where we'll always have the Coracle, the Samsay, and the Chenins. And if we come across some special wines, or I've come across some old wines regularly, where I think people are a bit scared to drink old wine, but if you discover the nose, the palate, the taste of a good old wine, it can be very exciting. So we also want to do projects like that, where we do different varietals, rare varietals, old wines. So we're going to stick to what we do. We're not going to grow the range endlessly. So we'll have our the ones that we have at the moment, but then do a few fun projects on the side. We're doing a little gin project at the moment also for the clients in Germany wanted some gin. We're going to send some gin to the UK and have a few bottles available for local consumption.
Exciting times in the world of the Harry Hartman Wine Company. You've got plenty of admirers, as we've seen. Here's another one, Jacques Wenzel, who's busy watching on Facebook. Love your work, Marcel, says one of the trio behind Black Elephant. He makes the wine, drinks it all.
Yeah, he's tasted our wines, and we love their wine. We love their whole range, and the brand. It's a very cool brand, Black Elephant. Yeah. Lovely people.
Some of the finer bubbles going around at the moment amongst many.
I was at Endless Bubble. It was brunch and Endless Bubble. I think it's quite a dangerous combination, but we made it.
Marcel, it's a really exciting project, and I'm very excited for you. I have to commend you not just on the wine, which is terrific, but the whole experience of receiving it. The packaging is superb. And the story is really good. So you've obviously put a lot of time and effort into it, and there's clearly a rich theme of passion as well. I don't think I need to wish you much luck because I think you're on the right road to a really great journey. But looking forward to trying that channel that's out and seeing what else you come up with in partnership with this mysterious masked winemaker of yours whose identity will never be revealed.
One day, hopefully, yeah. We'd like to let the world know who makes these amazing wines, but one day.
We'll get there. At the moment, he's the Stig of winemaking for now, so we'll keep that identity under wraps.
Yeah, some say he is.
Exactly.
One day we will know. Yeah.
All right, a perfect night there, Marcel. Thank you very, very much indeed. Really appreciate not just the time, but the wine as well. And let's have some more conversations once more of the wine is out. And in the interim, once I've finished this bottle, I'll go and book my next Zoom tooth whitening treatment to get rid of all the residual Shiraz or Syrah, depending on what's
We're around the corner. Yeah.
Marcel and Harry Hartman Wine Company, thank you very much. Really appreciate the time.
It's a pleasure. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
So there we go. With a couple of mates, they decided over a few glasses of wine to make some wine. A conversation I'm sure many of you have had as well, but this one was followed through on, and the very first releases on just the two of them for now, but big plans to come. Not in terms of the volume of the wines made. I think that'll still stay fairly small, but certainly broadening the range and finding a wider market to enjoy what at first tasting is some really strong wine, a Shiraz/Syrah, followed up by a red blend, and it's that big dose of Petit Verdot that really makes it stand out as something just a little bit different. So big thank you to Marcel Hartman. Big thank you to, a little earlier on in the show, Colyn Truter with the wines of Arendsig, which leads me just to remind you that the Pick and Pay Wine Club is flying along. You really should be a member of this. It's free of charge to enter. You simply send an SMS with your smart shopper number. And being a smart shopper is also free of charge to 36775. You get 3 times the smart shopper points on every bottle of wine you buy. You also get 20% off 10 different wines each and every month. And you'll get for yourself a 25% deal on both a case and a Magnum. There are also invitations to events, great competitions, and it's all free of charge. There is no reason not to be a member. So thank you for that. What have we got coming up? Oh, yes, Thursday. This is a big week, this is. Thursday, I will have Greg Sherwood. So I'll ask him one question and come back an hour later. Greg Sherwood, dear friend of mine, master of wine, based out of London, who will, together with Joe Waring from Wines of South Africa, be introducing the wines that we will be drinking at the South African Wine Tribe. That is next week, the first one of 2021 for all of our wine drinking friends in the UK. 2 wines from Andrea Molyneux, and then the Brookfield Shannon from one of my most exciting young winemakers. That's all coming up on Thursday as we preview the wines for next week. So look out for Greg and Joe on the show on Thursday. And next week, I think we've got a very special guest from Germany lined up, which I'm very excited about, as well as the story of Hees van Chevalerie, and how their wine, their bubbles in particular, link to a team of female firefighters. It's a terrific story and one I'm looking forward to sharing. In the meantime, keep supporting South African wine, keep buying, drinking, enjoying South African wine, and support an industry that continues to do such a terrific job both here and right around the world. I'm on the Dan Nicholl Show Instagram Live in about 4 minutes' time, talking to Donovan Goliath, a comedian and actor who's got a movie coming out on DSTV this weekend, makes its debut. Really exciting for Donovan. Then 9 o'clock tonight, I'll be joined together with Alan Committee by Paul Harris for this week's episode of Two Full Tosses. It's a busy Monday night. Make sure you've got a glass of wine in hand. Have a great one. I'll see you for Thursday's live show. Don't forget, Wine Future kicks off tomorrow, 5 o'clock South African time, the main conference, 4:30. I'll be warming up with Pancho and David. It's going to be a cracker of a 4 days. Hope to see you there as well. Have a great week. Thanks for joining us. Goodbye.